What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And man, the NFL Scouting Combine is underway, and the rumors are going crazy. There are so many trade rumors, free agency rumors. The New York Giants reported top priority is Matt Stafford. Aaron Rodgers reaching out. We want to just sit back, relax, and talk about every rumor that we've heard coming out of the NFL Scouting Combine in today's episode. We'll talk about things that are related just solely to the NFL Draft, and of course, the ones that directly affect the New York Giants. Some star players have been placed on the trade block. Should the Giants trade for them? Should they focus on this guy in the draft? We're going to go over all of it. There's a lot of fun stuff to discuss, and we're going to waste no time and just go ahead and dive right in. Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And you know what? Let's start it out with the Matt Stafford rumor, because it's once again intensified. Every single day, this rumor just keeps getting more and more intense. Today, Jordan Rannon of ESPN saying trading for Stafford is the Giants' top priority, although he doesn't think it's too likely to happen because the Rams are probably going to get a deal done. But what's your reaction to that? And, how are you feeling with all of these rumors that just keep swirling around with the Giants and Matt Stafford?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, we're going to do a little bit more of a different episode. People have been asking us to do more of an open mic, back and forth type of, and not so many monologues. And I agree. Very, very cool concept. We're going to try to do more of that for you guys so we have more back and forth conversation. But with Stafford, Anthony, the Giants are being played like a fiddle right now. They are being used, and you said it best on Twitter, it's the Lamar Jackson thing all over again. The Rams want to see what his market is, and they don't want to set it themselves, because sometimes if you're trying to bid for something and the only other bidder is you don't know where the price is. You don't know where to stop, or you don't know where to start. And I think that in this case, the Rams are trying to figure out, how do other people view Stafford? He's 37 years old. Historically, quarterbacks that end up 38, 39, 40, the decrease in production, the fall off is tremendous. It's significant in those 3 years. So you're kind of playing with fire. How do other teams visualize what that steep decline might look like if it does happen? Do they predict it? Do they foresee it? Are they willing to risk it? That's what the Giants are in this process, a figure to see what Stafford's value is, in my opinion, from the Rams perspective.
Yeah, and honestly, I like that you brought up my tweet, because I think I'll add more context to it in case people don't know what you're referring to. I posted on Twitter saying that the Giants are, in this situation, the teams that were negotiating with Lamar Jackson when he was franchise tagged. So circle back to a few years ago. I believe it was the 19 offseason. Maybe it was 2020. The Baltimore Ravens franchise tagged Lamar Jackson. They couldn't get a deal done. The two sides tried to negotiate. They hit a roadblock in negotiations. Lamar Jackson actually went as far. This is the part of NFL history that people always forget to talk about. He went as far as to request a trade from the Baltimore Ravens, which was unprecedented to see a franchise quarterback like that, of an MVP, request a trade in the manner that he did. The reason that he did it, well, he wasn't getting the money that he wanted in his contract offered from the Baltimore Ravens. So what did they do? They franchise tagged him, and they said anyone is allowed to negotiate with him. This is the non-exclusive franchise tag. Whoever wants to, go ahead and make a contract offer. Not a lot of teams did. Why? They didn't want to set the contract value for the Baltimore Ravens. Essentially what the Ravens wanted, let all those other teams do the legwork. Build this contract, put the incentives in there, put the amount of guarantees, set the market, and then we'll just match it, and we will pay Lamar Jackson. That, to me, is what the Los Angeles Rams are trying to do right now. That's why they gave Matt Stafford's agent permission to speak to teams and ask, what's the contract value that your team is willing to offer my player? That's what I think is going on here.
Yeah, and that probably is what's going on here. And why would the Rams want to get, and all the people that are saying, Stafford can be an elite quarterback. He'd be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC if the Giants were to acquire him. My question is, if you believe that, why would the Rams let him go when they have a roster who almost beat the Eagles, right? If they think that he can compete there and get them to a Super Bowl, why the hell do you give up on that? That's the question. And the Rams have all their draft picks. They could go into this draft class and go get the top BPA, just go BPA. They'll have some money on the board. They can create some void years if they want to. But they're trying to figure out, well, is Stafford worth $50 million? Is that what he's asking for? Are other teams willing to pay him that much? And if they are, what would they give us for him? So, let's see what that looks like, because maybe other teams will price him out of their range. The thing about the Giants, though, is that this is not a Rams team that just made it to a championship game. This is a team with flaws and roster holes and bad coaching in places. This is not a Rams organization that has Puka, has heavily invested in the offensive line, has Sean McVay, who by himself is worth a first-round pick.
Absolutely.
Dable's on the chopping block, and you're talking about a different element. You're talking a whole different organization here.
if there's one player on the Rams that I wanted to trade for,
Sean
it's not
McVay.
Stafford, it's not a player, it's Sean McVay. That would be
Yeah.
the guy that I would be willing to trade first-round draft capital to acquire. Sean McVay is a culture changer, one of the greatest offensive play callers in the history of the sport. Why would Stafford want to leave that? Well, he doesn't. Why would that play caller want to give up his starting franchise quarterback? I don't think he does. So, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, listen, the Rams do have honestly a Super Bowl caliber roster. They've been building in a win now phase and a window for years. I just can't imagine that they really want to give up Stafford in this window and try and start over at the quarterback position. I saw the report that they're interested in Jimmy Garoppolo as their starting quarterback. Get out of here. There's no way that they're comfortable with Jimmy Garoppolo as their starting quarterback in 2025. Jimmy Garoppolo is as washed up as they come. So, yeah, and he's a free agent. So they don't even have him under contract. The Rams wouldn't have a quarterback other than Stetson Bennett if they traded away Matt Stafford. It just doesn't make sense. You got to think of it from both perspectives. And, Alex, here's another part of it. If it's true, if it's legitimate, the Rams are really willing to trade away Matt Stafford, what the hell do they know about him that we don't? Why would the Rams give up on Stafford after, like you said, hanging in there? They were a red zone opportunity away from beating the eventual Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles in a blizzard on the road with Stafford as their quarterback. Why would they want to give that up? And if they do give that up, what's the reason that we don't know? Why are they comfortable moving on from Matt Stafford? In my opinion, the fact that the Rams are even entertaining this, if they really truly are entertaining a possible trade, that should be concerning enough to give Joe Shane second thought and say maybe this isn't a good idea. The Rams probably know something that we don't.
Absolutely. And then let's kind of segue this into the next part of this discussion with Aaron Rodgers. So now we heard two rumors about Aaron Rodgers in the last 24 hours. One of them is that if the Rams did trade Stafford, he would be interested in going to LA along with Devonta Adams to be their new tandem with Puka, have that Rodgers kind of centric offense. Now, Rodgers, what is he, 40 years old? He's the definition of what decline looks like at that age, right? He has declined substantially, and the injury happened, things happen. Stafford has missed time in the past. You want to stick him behind an offensive line, the Giants, that simply cannot do their job. He's going to get hurt. And I'm scared about that. Like, you invest that much money in a player at that age, the injury probability skyrockets. Rodgers is the perfect example of that. The Jets tried to do that. They tried to piece together their offensive line. Rodgers goes down the first freaking drive of the season, and then he's out for a year. Last year, we saw vintage Rodgers on a few occasions, but really he was, incapable, not because of him entirely, but also because of their scheme and the way that they were kind of playing over in Jets land. But with that being said, we're also hearing, and this is not a very reliable report, because I want to point out, I think it was Mike Florio, was that what his name is, from NBC Sports. He usually puts out BS. In the past I've seen. Sometimes, I guess, I mean, you may differ. I've seen things where he's been way off, totally off, where actual people have come on and said this is not true. But if he is right in the situation, maybe he has a 50-50 chance of being right in this instance. If he's at the combine and he heard something, I'll take his word for it in that instance. He said that Rodgers, the word is on the street that Rodgers reached out to the Giants about potentially playing for them. I am not a Rodgers fan right now. I am not a Rodgers advocate. I think he's crazy. But I would rather have Rodgers as a 1-year stopgap veteran and then draft a Cam Ward to sit behind it, because I actually think Rodgers is a damn good mentor for a player like Ward, specifically play styles. I personally feel that way. Then trading draft capital and paying long-term Stafford. That's how I feel about that.
This is going to be a rare instance where we disagree on the Stafford situation. I would rather have Stafford, depending on the price tag of the trade. I really don't want anything to do with Aaron Rodgers. I get it. He had a decent statistical season, and towards the second half of the year, sure, he started to play better. That was after they had to fire the head coach and offensive coordinator and change the entire organization because of Aaron Rodgers. I really don't want to deal with it. That's just how I feel personally. I get it. He's a future Hall of Famer. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks in league history, but he brings with him so much baggage, and he brings with him so many problems, or at least he did over to the New York Jets. Now, I know those two situations are the same. Maybe he wouldn't want that kind of control. Maybe he really does just, play quarterback for the Giants and doesn't try and get involved in the front office. I would assume that's the way it would go, but even still, I don't think the amount of money that you would have to pay Aaron Rodgers, because keep in mind, Alex, if he does hit free agency, you are talking about probably giving him $40 million. That's the going rate for a starting quarterback. That's a lot of money to hand Aaron Rodgers, who's 40 years old, who just had an up and down season, to call it that. That's the best way that I could describe it, the most gentle way to describe it. I don't like it. And I also think that, while you're right in terms of playing style, maybe he would be a good mentor for Cam Ward. In terms of personality and how poorly he mentored Zach Wilson, I don't want him here. I don't want anything to do with it. I don't think he's a good mentor. In fact, I think he's too me-centric to be a good mentor for Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, or anybody. So I'm out on Aaron Rodgers. I really don't want him to sign here. If he does, I hope that he bounces back and he's a good player for the Giants. But I also do trust the Florio report. I think that Florio's been right sometimes, wrong sometimes, like you said. But just in general, I don't know. This is one that would honestly frustrate me.
Yeah, so here's my kind of counter to that, and it's based on like what the players of the Jets have said. The players have said nothing but good things about Rodgers, and I know they're not going to say anything bad, but they could, and it's all been good stuff. I blame Woody Johnson for the mess the Jets just went through, not so much Rodgers. Woody Johnson was making decisions because his son was looking at Madden ratings.
Yes.
Like, we're talking about idiocy beyond our wildest dreams. Like, Rodgers, I actually think, was more of a stable situation than he was anything else in that situation, because Woody Johnson is off his rocker, dude. Like, he came back.
Yeah, but
if you read that athletic story, it's a disaster for Woody Johnson. Everything about him is a disaster.
Yes.
So I'll say this. I think Rodgers, and from what people said, was a good dude. They helped, I think Jermaine Johnson was a player that said something about him, and specifically Jermaine Johnson had to be somewhere after an injury or whatever, or maybe, sorry, he had tore his Achilles. He went to Rodgers for help, and Rodgers flew him on his private jet all the way to like Cali to get treatment or something. Like, it was something like that. But he did, and look, it's just I don't have any qualms with Rodgers at this point in terms of like him as a factor in the organization. I think the Jets have issues that are way beyond Rodgers.
Yes, absolutely.
And as you said, the situations are far different because the Giants are bringing in Rodgers to be a bridge and to give him one last payday. That is all. That would be the role that he would play on this team, and try to compete while you still can for a year. Like, that's it. Instead of trying to walk into a Jets team that they thought was ready to win. I think Rodgers knows he's not winning a Super Bowl at this point in his career unless he's a backup, and he's on a backup for a really good team. That's how I kind of feel about him at this point. I don't even think he's going to be worth $40 million, because if Sam Darnold right now, and people are saying like $30 million per season, I think Darnold is a better quarterback than Rodgers is at this point in his career. So I sit there and I question, like, how much is Rodgers really worth? Because I don't think his market's going to be there at $40 million.
Okay, maybe it's not $40 million, but even still, it's going to be more expensive than most of the bridge quarterbacks that are set to hit the open market. And great story about Jermaine Johnson. What about Garrett Wilson? Garrett Wilson almost reportedly requested a trade because he hated Aaron Rodgers so much. So, I don't know how much stock we could put into any single report. It's all rumors and it's all gossip, truly, coming out of the New York Jets. However, it was also gossip coming out of the Green Bay Packers when Aaron Rodgers was there, and that's why he was shipped away to the New York Jets. So I just think that there's a long-spanning history here over the last 5 or so years where Rodgers has just created drama, gossip, and bullshit everywhere that he's gone.
I'll throw something out there, though.
Sure.
Daniel Jones didn't say a goddamn word for 6 years, and he still caused more harm to the Giants organization than Aaron Rodgers ever did to the Packers organization.
To the Packers, sure, but not to the Jets, man. He blew, but again, I get what you're saying. Woody Johnson is the problem. Yes, absolutely. Yes. But Nathaniel Hackett never should have gotten that job. He only got that job because Aaron Rodgers said it was a package deal.
Yes.
That ruined Zach Wilson. That ruined the season that Garrett Wilson had. I mean, that messed up the Jets' offense so badly, and that was Aaron Rodgers.
But I also do think, though, and I'll say at this point in his career, he has no leverage in that respect. Like, Woody Johnson bent the knee for Rodgers, and Rodgers had the ability to like enforce these things on the Jets. He no longer has that power. So I feel like if you're the Giants, and you're like, listen, this is the role that we have. You're gonna be a bridge. You're not bringing in Nathaniel Hackett. We're paying you for one season, ride or die. Get the hell out after. It's 1 year, done. Bridge. Draft a quarterback. Let them learn from a historical, like Rodgers' game. You can learn from that as a backup player. And here's the truth, though. Mentorships in the NFL, like this guy learning from that guy, it really doesn't have that much of an impact on how they're going to play in the future. I think people overblow the whole mentor thing. Bridge quarterback, the reason you want a bridge quarterback is not because you're learning from the starter. It's because you want to learn the cadences of the offense, so when you get into that starting position, you are ready to manage that offense at a very high level in terms of cadences, knowledge, experience, pre-checks, all that stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah, but that's exactly why I'm not interested in Rodgers, because I don't think that the mentorship value, that's the big selling point that Giants fans have for Rodgers. Ooh, imagine him mentoring a rookie quarterback. I don't think the mentorship is all that impactful or important. So I don't really see what the major benefit is to signing Rodgers versus
Winston.
any other free agents. Exactly. Winston is a 1-year mentor, good locker room leader.
I'm fine with that too, though. You know my opinion on that. Like,
Yes.
I don't want Stafford. I don't care who our bridge quarterback is. Because the truth is you cannot win while you're rebuilding. It's a fallacy. Joe Shane has sold us a bill of goods that's a total crap. Dave Gettleman sold us the same bill of goods that was total crap. And Joe Shane said it yesterday for the first time I've heard him in this entire 3-year span say the right way to build a team is to draft a quarterback and build around that contract for 5 years. He said it to our faces, and nobody's talking about it. You know what I mean? No one's talking about it. He literally gave us the answer
We're talking about it.
We are talking about it. Maybe the only podcast talking about it, because no one else has mentioned the fact he told us how to build a team, and that's how you do it. Every true and tried team is doing it. Ben Johnson, I listened to him today. Everyone thinks that Ben Johnson is a fucking genius. I'm sorry. Not going to happen again. Freaking genius. But Ben Johnson said the league is going in the direction of more creative quarterbacks. The league is going in the direction where it's not about 1, 2, 3. It's about what can you do when the play breaks down. Ben Johnson's saying that, the guy that everyone would have killed somebody to get for the Giants this year. That's the guy that just said that. So who are we believing now? Are we finally gonna like believe the guys that are leading the charge and rebuilds and developing quarterbacks and developing offenses? Are we just gonna revert back to what we always believe, and we can slap a Band-Aid on something for 2 years, or slap a Band-Aid on something, not take a gamble, not take a risk on a draft pick, and then build it the right way that good, competent teams do? That Stafford is a Band-Aid for a problem that is going to show its face in another 2 years. Guaranteed.
Right, so we've gotten back to the Stafford thing, and I'll round out my points there. But just where I stand. I want to draft a quarterback. But back to the Rodgers thing, I just want to make my final point on this. I had a take on it. I don't know what my take is because I don't know what his market value is. When I find out how much he costs, then I'll decide whether or not I want the Giants to sign him. After having this conversation about it, I have a more open mind now. He's not my option 1. He's probably not even my option 2 or 3. However, I will say it depends on the price tag, because if he is only signing a 1-year, $10 million deal for Aaron Rodgers, okay, he's still an average quarterback. That much I can get behind. But if it is a $20, $30 million deal, or if you have to trade for that awful contract that the Jets have, count me out. So it's going to depend on price tag there for Aaron Rodgers. But back to the Stafford thing, Alex, I do find it very interesting that Jordan Rannon said the Giants' top priority is trading for Matthew Stafford. Like, that's really what they're chasing down and trying to do, is what he's heard at the scouting combine. And I want to ask you this. What does that say about the Giants' interest in this quarterback class? If their top priority at the combine is to try and get a trade for Matt Stafford, why is their top priority not to...
Dude, it's
scout these quarterbacks, meet them, get to know them better, and decide which quarterback they prefer? Yeah, I know, but I don't know. To me, we've heard so much chatter about how these quarterbacks keep falling down draft boards, how they're not that loved inside the league.
Yep.
To me, that report about the Giants making Stafford their top priority, it indicates to me some level of the Giants aren't that high on this quarterback class.
It's absolutely possible. But Joe Shane also said we're going to turn over every single stone. We're going to do all of our research on every single player. I don't buy for a second his vague response on Cam Ward personally. And all we've heard all offseason is how they love Shedeur Sanders. Now all of a sudden they want Matt Stafford. You know what I mean? Like, there's too many narratives for me to buy any of them. You know what I mean? Like, there's too many stories, too many possibilities, too many narratives being created by the media, being created by Joe, being created by vague responses that are nitpicked in this. Here we hear Mike Florio say something, Jordan Rodon say something else. How are we supposed to know? This is when BS lies happen. This is the exact time period when we cannot trust a single thing they say.
Well, that's the whole point of this episode, is to respond and react to all of these rumors.
Yeah, of course. And they're all untrustworthy to me, because one day they love Sanders, one day they haven't watched any film on Ward, and the next day they've talked to Rodgers, and today they like Stafford, and their top target is Stafford, and so was the Raiders. Like, I thought Raiders wanted Sanders because Tom Brady loves Sanders. It's all just up in the air. It's all craziness.
Personally, to me, none of this sounds inconsistent. This is all following a linear path to me. I think that this is a progression, and obviously their interest in the quarterbacks in the draft, like I said yesterday, is going to increase after free agency. But these GMs who are at the combine, they have their scouts with them. The scouts are looking at the quarterbacks in the draft. The GMs are really primarily focusing in on who's going to be available in free agency in 2 weeks. So all of this is really in line for me and makes sense. Like, I don't think that this is all smoke and mirrors and BS. I get what you're saying, how the narrative keeps changing, but to me, it doesn't feel like the narrative has changed all that much. The Giants have a quarterback that they like in the draft, but their top priority is Matt Stafford, and all the other reporting from every single source seems to indicate that that is the truth, that they are really trying to trade for Matthew Stafford. So, but if that's the case, so my take is, if they're making Stafford their top priority, rather than drafting a quarterback their top priority, then they must not be too crazy about the quarterbacks in this draft. Because if you thought there was a franchise quarterback that you could take at number 3 overall, your top priority would not be trading for Matthew Stafford, in my opinion. And so that's where I get confused. And I'm talking about some of the top players in this draft class, Alex. I have another player that I want to discuss, but before I do, I want to take a look over at BetUS and take a look at the first overall draft pick once again, because the odds have changed, and even odds now on Abdul Carter to go number 1 overall in this year's draft. If you guys didn't see all the different rumors and reports, and we're going to dive into these in just a second after I finish this, Abdul Carter looks like he's going to be the number 1 overall pick according to most sources, and the Titans today just put Harold Landry, their top pass rusher, on the trade block. So you combine those two things, I think at even odds, this is the time to take this bet. Cam Ward is still minus 150 to go number 1 overall in this draft. I think it should be flip-flopped. I think that Abdul Carter should have the highest odds to go number 1 overall, and he doesn't. So now's the time. I'm going to take advantage of this, throw $10 down, and hopefully double my money in April on this pick. So that's my pick for today's sponsored bet over on BetUS. Make sure to go check it out, the sportsbook with the fastest payouts in the industry, and use code YouTube150 for a 150% deposit match up to $2,000 on your first bet. Now, Alex, Abdul Carter potentially going number 1 overall. What's your take on it? Do you think that Harold Landry being put on the trade block indicates that it's very likely he goes number 1 overall? Or do you still think there's an avenue here where the Giants could potentially trade up to the number 1 overall with the Titans?
It's a really, really good question. This is one of the narratives I was most excited to discuss because this one could be real. This one I think is possible because Harold Landry, that's a big piece of that Titans defense they just made available via trade. And look, I'm not saying it opens up the possibility of anything, but what I am saying is that it opens up a huge need for them. And this is what teams do, though. I said this yesterday on the podcast, actually. It's kind of perfectly timed. Teams that have a plethora of talent and they draft BPA, trade aging players for draft picks and then replace them with better talent when they're get younger, and they just keep, if you have a surplus, you trade out of that surplus. You trade from your strengths to address weaknesses. That's what good teams do. So I do think that the Titans making Harold Landry available very much indicates that they could be going after Abdul Carter first overall. Abdul Carter is the best player. I wouldn't say is, but I'd say it's neck and neck with him and Travis Hunter. It's 1A, 1B, whatever your need is. If you need a cornerback more, you need a receiver more, you need a pass rusher more, you just take one of those guys. You take the one that fits your need most, because those guys are probably graded out quite evenly. But Abdul Carter has elite upside as well. And it's hard to pass on guys like that, especially if you're not totally convinced about the quarterback class. So if the Titans find themselves in a position where they want Abdul Carter and they feel as though the Browns are a problem, there's two things they can do, right? They can either trade the first-round pick to the Giants and have a chance of getting Carter anyway, or end up with Travis Hunter, 1A, 1B, you still get the blue chipper, or you just take Carter 1, and then the Browns do whatever the Browns are going to do, and the Giants now have a decision to make. Do we feel as though whoever that quarterback that's available, could be Cam, could be Sanders, or do you take Travis Hunter in that instance if the Browns end up going with the quarterback? So there's a lot of different options that could unfold with that first pick, but Carter going 1, it's good for the Giants because they can trade back if they feel like they want to, but it also may not be good for the Giants because it means that the Titans may not want to move back.
Yeah, personally, I don't think it's good for the Giants if the Titans lock in on a specific player, because I think that the Browns are going to draft a quarterback, and if the Giants want to draft a quarterback, they want to get ahead of the Browns. Let's say that the QB1 on the Giants board is Cam Ward, and that's the same case for the Cleveland Browns. The Tennessee Titans, if they take Abdul Carter, Cam Ward's going number 2 overall to the Browns. The Giants are going to have to pick between Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, which might be their plan B. We always want to shoot for the plan A, but they might have to settle for their plan B in that scenario. Now, here's another take. If the Titans decide that they want to take Abdul Carter number 1, or if they take Cam Ward, whatever, and the Browns decide that they have a quarterback that they like, this complicates more things for the New York Giants, because you want to try and get ahead of the Browns in order to draft your quarterback because that's the one that the Browns want. But the Titans might not be willing to trade down if they're locked in on Abdul Carter. So I think that's kind of the hurdle that the Giants are going to have to jump if the Titans are indeed locked into a quarterback. Abdul Carter at number 1 overall.
Yeah, it's a tough situation to be in for the Giants because like they kind of lose no matter what in this situation because like the Browns are just such a wild card, you know? Like I just don't know what they're going to do.
I think they're taking Cam Ward if he's there.
I think
100%.
you're probably,
I think that's what they're doing.
You're probably right. If the Giants want Cam Ward, they're going to have to move up to 1. You know, that's the unfortunate truth for them in case.
Yeah, but I think here's the problem is if the Giants want Cam Ward and they move to they want to move to number 1
right.
to do that, I don't think the Titans trust the Browns to not take Abdul Carter at number 2.
Right.
So they might not move down to 3. So that's why I think this whole thing has become complicated. If the Titans truly are locked into Abdul Carter, that's the number 1 player that they want in this draft. They're going to take him at number 1. Cam Ward's probably going to go number 2. The Giants are going to have to pick between Hunter and Shador rather than having their choice of their top quarterback. But then again, who knows? Maybe the rumors are true and Shador Sanders is the Giants' top quarterback. It's totally
possible. And here's where I'll read through the tea leaves in that the Browns keeps insisting they don't want to trade Myles Garrett. But if they found themselves in a position to take Abdul Carter, they probably make Garrett available, right? They're probably just waiting to see how the draft unfolds because that gives them more leverage. If they wait, they probably.
You think Myles Garrett would be a draft day trade? You don't think that he would get traded during the free agency window?
I don't know, but I'm just trying to think about what gives the Browns the most leverage. And if the Browns walk into the draft and Abdul Carter's the guy that they are wanting, or maybe another team, maybe Abdul Carter doesn't go first and another team really wants Abdul Carter, they now can like demand a ransom for Myles Garrett in that instance, or they can demand a ransom for a team wanting to move up for Carter because they're like, well, we could just trade Garrett and get this picks back. Like, you have to give us more draft capital, whatever, or players. I don't know. Like they can use that second overall pick if Carter is there as a tool for them to create more demand for Myles Garrett from teams that may want to move up for a guy like Carter or whatever it might be. I don't know. But I feel like knowing what's going to happen in the draft, if a team misses out on a player that they really want or they need this upgrade, I mean, look, Myles Garrett's going to cost a ton anyway. Like, no matter what team gets him,
he's first.
At least a first. And the truth is like, if Carter and Hunter are like one of the 2 like gold standard prospects in this draft class, the Titans, if I was the Titans, I would be taking Carter most likely first overall. That's probably what I would do, especially after this Harold news. I think that's probably what their best interest is in their best interest. The Browns are strange because like you just don't know what they're going to do. We've heard reports they don't want a quarterback, but then we heard Ian Rappaport say they're most likely going to walk away with a quarterback, and that quarterback's probably going to be Cam Ward. And if the Giants like Sanders, they don't even have to move. He's going to be there at 3.
Right.
The question is, it's tough. It's tough,
if the Giants end up trading for Stafford and they don't think that Shador is worth the number 3 overall pick, then does that open it up for them to take Travis Hunter or the BPA, whoever that might be? Totally possible. It's actually very interesting the way that all these rumors are reshaping the top of the NFL draft. You know, you often hear during the combine how things are going to affect free agency. I feel like a lot of the rumors this time around are not so much affecting free agency as much as they are affecting the NFL draft this year, and I think that's a product of it being a very crazy draft class with not a lot of top tier talent. Like, it's a very unknown draft class. Last year we knew the top 5 picks were going to feature 3 quarterbacks. Like, we knew Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and Caleb Williams were all going to be top 5 picks. This year we really don't know who's going to go in the top 5. We think maybe Carter, Hunter, and Cam are locks for the top 5, but even then, Cam has top 15 projections on some boards, and Sanders is ranked in the 30s and 40s on some draft boards. So I don't know. It's very interesting the way that this draft is shaping up to be, and how the scouting combine isn't giving us as much clairvoyance, in my opinion, this year as it did in years prior.
Yeah, it's just because we don't know what the Titans or Browns want. And we also know that these quarterbacks aren't as highly touted as last year, so we just don't know where they land because like the demand for quarterbacks always makes their selections higher. I don't know, man. Like this is one of those drafts where I just can't figure out what's going to happen just yet. Of course we will, but the combine isn't going to give us much information. We'll hear rumors. These are where GMs meet up. This is where those things start to kind of turn. Those grinds start to gear. And I do believe, I know I was a little dyslexic, but it's fine. It's supposed to be opposite, but it worked because of like the dyslexia. I was fine. But regardless of my problems, the Giants have their own. And Stafford, that element, I think he stays with the Rams. I think, like you mentioned before, if the Giants need to win, they find themselves in this spot, and that's why I thought it was favorable for them to fire Dable and Joe Schoen, because they could make the decision that was best for the organization right now in the state of this franchise, the state of this roster, without having to try and save their own asses at the same time. You know what I mean? Because now Joe Schoen has to figure out, how do I win enough games next year to save my job, but also set this franchise up for long-term success? Those two things alone are insanely difficult to achieve. Win at the same time, like win right now, and set the team up for long-term success. Having to do them together is near impossible. So Joe Schoen has all the cards stacked against him. John Mara's put his ass in a freaking corner and said, figure it out, buddy. That's what you're being paid to do. You failed already multiple times. And now I'm sitting here like, how do we trust Joe to do what's best for this team long term, but also not compromise us for the future, where if he does get fired, he's not strapping a future management with a $50 million per year quarterback and no young quarterback on the roster to inherit that job. Like, that's where I face the problems, in that the Giants are going to be the most unattractive destination ever next year. But at the same time, if they do draft a quarterback and he gets fired, it's not the other GM's quarterback. It's just nothing. He has to pull a miracle out of his ass, man. That's the only way this happens.
Can I tell you the only way that miracle gets pulled out is if you draft a quarterback and they have a Jaden Daniels level season. Like, that's literally the only way. Yeah. Like, you need a CJ Stroud or a Jaden Daniels or whoever, name your pick of a rookie quarterback that stepped in and changed the franchise. That is the only way that you win and set yourself up for long-term success. You might buy a few extra wins if you trade for Stafford, or if you sign Russell Wilson, or if you sign Aaron Rodgers, but you're not necessarily giving yourself long-term success unless you have a rookie quarterback on the roster. But the only way that you get wins, legitimate wins, job-saving wins in 2025, plus hope for 2026, 27, 28, is if you draft a quarterback and you hit on that quarterback and you have a franchise quarterback as a rookie. And that's why I'm in favor, Alex, of drafting Shedeur Sanders number 3 overall, or trading up for Cam Ward number 1 overall, because I think the only way that you set yourself up for that future success is if you hit on the quarterback position, and the quarterback position is the hardest position to hit on, and you have to take a chance here, even if you're not 100% convinced that this guy is a franchise quarterback. If you're 50% convinced, take a chance on the 50%, because most quarterbacks aren't franchise quarterbacks, but most of them just need to go into the right situation at the right time, and then you hit on them, and then you get a franchise quarterback. So if you think there's even a chance that this guy's a franchise guy, I think you got to take him early, and that's the route that the New York Giants need to go. That's how you're going to build for the future. And also, Alex, speaking of building for the future, there was another report, this one from Paul Schwartz of the New York Post. Evan Neal hasn't even started thinking about training at guard. How many times have we been talking about, how many times have we had this conversation about the Giants and their inability to develop players? Like, what are they doing with Evan Neal? He still hasn't even started thinking about training for guard. Apparently, his plan is still to train at right tackle all throughout the summer. I guess the Giants can't give him any sort of different kind of training regime until, later on this summer, but it does prove that they had zero conversations prior to the offseason of moving him to guard, and so now he's still training at tackle, and he will be all offseason, which is just shocking. I don't know.
Evan Neal, by my standards, is not on this team because I am not factoring him into this offensive line at all. Best case scenario, he's a serviceable depth piece. That is it. Best case scenario, in my opinion, best case scenario is a serviceable depth piece. He's not a starting right guard. He's barely a competent backup right tackle. We need to move on from this fallacy that he can be anything but what he was. He's going to go to another team and have a fine career. I guarantee it. But as a Giant, he's done. He's done. He has been spending the last 4 years trying to figure out how to play right tackle, and we expect him to figure out how to play right guard in one offseason. It's not happening. Not happening. The Giants need to go into free agency and get themselves a decent average right guard to survive or draft somebody. I don't know how that'll go. They got to figure it out. Not my job. But they have exhausted the resources they've been trying to invest in this offensive line. Exhausted it. right? They've dumped money into John Runyon. They dumped money into Jermaine Luminor. They extended Andrew Thomas. They spent a second-round pick on JMS. They spent a first-round pick on Evan Neal. These guys cannot build competent offensive lines. They can't. It's been an age-old story for the Giants. Now, I'll give Carmen Brasillo the benefit of the doubt. He had one season. Now, his O-line got injured. They looked more promising at the first half of the year. I'll give him that. But I need to see a full year of competent offensive line play. The second half of that season was back to square one after the injuries. They have to find a competent right guard, and it cannot be Evan Neal.
Thoughts on Joe Schoen saying that the Giants have 4 of their 5 starting positions on the offensive line locked in?
That makes sense to me.
Does
that
it?
makes sense to me.
You don't think there's
Yes.
any room for improvement? Like, we shouldn't at least be seeking some sort of upgrades at these other spots?
If they can find an upgrade, yeah, I mean, center, maybe I would think about JMS, but I also think that JMS,
for me
he's
personally,
not good, but
no, he hasn't been good. I don't think that JMS, John Runyon, or Jermaine Illuminor prevent me from taking a talent on the offensive line if I think they're good.
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm absolutely drafting a player at one of those 3 spots. If somebody was there and I was like, this is an upgrade, or could be, I'm taking a shot if it's BPA. As long as it's BPA, I don't find any problem with the practice there. With that being said, though, like, they've spent substantial resources on these guys. It's just every time Joe Schoen says something like that, it's like, it's because he's already addressed it and he can't fathom the idea that, like, maybe he didn't do a good job there. You know what I mean? Like, maybe he can't swallow his pride and just go BPA and reinforce a position that may already have been invested in. That's what the Eagles do. That's what other teams do that are really good. They have strengths. They reinforce those strengths. But with that being said, I do think they're going to sign an offensive guard. And the thing is, this team has too many needs. Like, we don't have a strong safety. We don't have a right guard. We need a receiver. We need a cornerback. We need we need an interior defender. We need a quarterback. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have enough resources to address all these things with above-average starters. We're going to be leaning again on our mid-round picks to start games for the Giants, which is very disappointing.
It is disappointing, but that's just the state of their roster, and that's why they're not positioned to win now and make some sort of insane trade for a 37-year-old quarterback, in my opinion. However, they might do that anyway. But if they don't make that trade for Matt Stafford, Alex, could they make a trade for somebody else? And follow along with my line of thinking here. In 2023, the New York Giants made a blockbuster trade to bring in Darren Waller. In 2024, Joe Schoen did the exact same thing, made a blockbuster trade to bring in Brian Burns. The trend for both of those players was they're having some contract negotiation problems, they're aging, and they've had injuries in the past, so you can get them a little bit cheaper than you might expect. So boom, you go ahead and you trade for those players. Now there's a player who has a very similar story who's on the trade block right now for a major position of need for the New York Giants. That is Packers cornerback Jaire Alexander, who Ian Rappaport reported today. The Packers have had several conversations with teams around the league about potentially trading Jaire Alexander away. What's your take on this? Are you let's go trade for Jaire? Or is that a guy who's on your short target list? Or are you saying, okay, he's played 14 games in the last 2 years, I don't want to deal with him because he's too injured?
It's a really, really good question. Jaire Alexander is obviously one of the best cornerbacks when healthy. He's a true competitor. This is a guy that he's a CB1, and he's going to fill that need for you. However, he has 2 years left on his contract, and he's owed $25 million cap hits both years, maybe even more than that in that last season. So it's a lot of chunk. It's a lot of chunk, and it's a lot of change. I do think that if you are the Giants, you have other needs. You invested a first-round pick on Dante Bakes. It's time to get or try to get as much value as possible from him. But I'd rather sign a free agent like a DJ Reed or Charvarius Ward because I think it's going to be cheaper than Jaire Alexander and, to be quite honest, healthier. So I think I would probably rather go in that direction and lock them in on a contract on your terms instead of acquiring a different contract and a player that has a lot of injury history. That's kind of how I would address it. But, maybe
I agree with you. I would rather, just sign players in free agency because you don't have to trade draft capital. But I will throw this out there. Jaire Alexander is on a contract that if he doesn't get traded, the Packers will very likely release him from anyway. So he might end up being a free agent. Then he shoots near the top of the free agent target list for the New York Giants, in my opinion. However, I will say this. If the Packers feel like they can't get a suitable trade package for him and they're leaning towards releasing him, that's when you as the Giants say, don't release him. We'll take on the contract. We've got plenty of future we have plenty of future cap space. Just take a 6th-round pick, something late, something that we don't even care about in exchange for Jaire Alexander, or this 4th compensatory pick that we got for Xavier McKinney. You guys took McKinney from us. Let us send you this 4th that we got from McKinney. Give us Jaire Alexander. I think that it could end up being a very cheap trade. Like, I think a lot of people are going to think of Alexander, two-time second-team All-Pro, two-time Pro Bowler, one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL when healthy, as you said. He's probably going to cost a lot. I actually don't think he is, because there's actually rumblings that the Packers might cut him if they can't find a trade partner. Therefore, the trade price is probably going to be very, very cheap. Fourth-round pick or later is a potential option for Alexander. If that's the case, then yeah, I kind of do become enticed as a New York Giants. Get yourself a CB1, even if he's hurt, all right? You still have cap space. Maybe you still sign a decent CB2 in free agency, and you have Banks now. So that would kind of be my attack plan there. I think it's a wait and see with Jair Alexander, but again, since he's on the trade block, I want to throw him out there. And one other player, Alex, that I want to throw out there, potentially on the trade block,
Debo?
Joe Milton.
Oh.
Who did you have? Oh, Debo?
Debo, because I saw that the 49ers are honoring his request to be traded.
Yeah, and they'll release him if they can't find a trade partner as well. So it's a similar story with Alexander.
I don't love Debo.
The thing with Debo is age,
his whole game has
and
fallen
health
off.
And
yeah, he's not that bulldozer he once was. Like that was what made him great. He's not super fast.
Right.
He's not super quick. He's just a tackle shedder, and he just isn't shedding those tackles at the pace anymore that he was. And the injuries are starting to pile up. To me, he's not. He's worth nothing more than a late round pick, and the contract he's on still can't fathom that either. So Joe Milton's an interesting one though.
Yeah, Joe Milton would be. Well, I'll just say this on Debo. I don't even think he's a fit for the Giants' offense and what they're trying to do. Like, I know that they had a lot of short passes last year, and so some run after the catch abilities, but I think that's really the role of Wan'Dale Robinson, and I don't think the Giants are eager to replace Wan'Dale Robinson. So I just don't think that Debo's a fit for the Giants, and I think that Debo's probably seeking a team more akin to like the Los Angeles Chargers or Houston Texans, a team in the AFC that's competitive and, can make a playoff run immediately. Giants aren't that, so and that might be the case for Jair as well, but we'll see. With Joe Milton, here's the thing with Joe Milton. The Giants should have drafted him last year, right? Like, we can agree on that. Where did he go? The 6th round to the Patriots? The Patriots drafted Drake May and still were like, you know what, best player available, let's go ahead and take this quarterback. Throw another dart at the board, get ourselves something so that in the near future, maybe we trade him for more than what we spent on him. Isn't that exactly what I always say, Alex? Just throw darts at the board for quarterback because they appreciate in value. And if they don't appreciate in value, if they depreciate, it's never enough to make them unworthy of being traded away. Josh Rosen still went for a 2nd-round pick after a historically bad rookie season. Throw darts at the board for quarterbacks. That's what I always say. It's what the Giants should have done last year. It's why they should have taken a quarterback in the middle rounds, whether that was a Rattler or a Joe Milton. I know neither of those players are good, but they still have trade value that you can mortgage in the future. That's why I'm a proponent of throwing those darts in the middle rounds. Milton now is on the trade block a year later, probably going to be traded for more than the 6th-round pick that the Patriots spent on him. Yep. This is my point. This has always been my point. Anyway, what would you be willing to give up for Joe Milton? Me personally, not a whole lot. I think the Giants should draft their own rookie quarterback. However, as a high upside backup and a project for Brian Daboll to work on the side, if the Giants don't land their quarterback in the 1st round of this year's draft, yeah, maybe Milton as this young project on the side for Daboll to work on. I could be interested, but again, it would have to be a very cheap potential trade.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is Joe Milton, everyone went crazy over that game he played against backups at the end of the season, and like that does not sway my opinion whatsoever. Yeah, he's got a gun. Yeah, he can run around, but can he do it against a starting caliber team? We have not seen that. So, I mean, credit to the Patriots, though. They drafted Drake May and Joe Milton in the same draft class. They know that Drake May is their future. They know Milton's not. Why not kind of just turn that over into a 5th-round pick or even a 4th-round pick if someone was so zesty? So I do think, it's definitely a situation where like the Patriots are going to get more value than they paid for a 6th-round pick, and those are toss-away picks, by the way, 6th-rounders most of the time. If they can turn that into a 4th or a 5th, they walk away really happy. And think about the Giants. 5th-round picks that we've had in the past, most recently, Tyrone Tracy and Micah McFadden, 2 pretty good players for us. So you never know. You never know what those guys can be if you get a little bit better draft pick from a player that just was basically sitting there and learning anyway with Drake May. For the Giants, the only way I'm going to get Joe Milton is if like we're looking for backup, we're looking for competition. Like I don't view him as an actual competitor in a QB1 role. I think he needs a lot more work, and he may never even get there, to be quite honest. I wouldn't go that route if I were the Giants.
Like I said, high upside project as a backup quarterback. Like we don't know what Joe Milton can be. He's got all the intangible tools, traits. He's a freak athlete, crazy gun on his shoulder. All those things are true. You view him as a backup. And if you trade for him, you view him as a long-term backup plan. And that's where I do have some interest, though, for the New York Giants, because who's their quarterback on their roster right now, Alex? It's just Tommy DeVito. And it's been made pretty clear that the Giants don't view him as their backup long-term plan at quarterback. So if you want somebody with a little bit more upside who can be that long-term backup, maybe you do throw a dart added Jalen Milroe through this draft rather than last year's draft. The problem is you only have 3 years now on his contract since you didn't draft him and you're trading for him and inheriting his contract that's already lost a year. But I do think here's the line of thinking that the Giants could take, Alex. If we're picking in the 4th or 5th round, then we're like, okay, I want to take a quarterback here. But you know what? Joe Milton has a higher draft grade than I have on Will Howard or Tyler Schlow or whoever the hell is on the board right now for me. Well, if you've got a higher grade on Milton, then maybe you just take that pick and you throw it at Milton rather than drafting your own. But again, I think that the contract is important to keep in consideration here. You've only got 3 years on Milton's deal. But yeah, I want to throw him out there. I know a lot of Giants fans are really excited about the idea of Milton, think he's an interesting player, and I do too. I just don't know if we're the right environment for a Joe Milton right now. But yeah, I mean, what other rumors stood out to you, if any at all, before we wrap this thing up? I mean, we went through a ton of them right now, and there's going to be way more, so we're probably going to do same thing tomorrow, same thing the day after, just keep flying through these rumors because, man, this combine has been a lot of fun to track and keep progress of all of the different news and storylines coming out of it.
Yep, lots of stuff. I think we covered all the big ones for the most part. Trying to think of anything else I saw, but yeah, Stafford, Rodgers, Jair Alexander, Abdul Carter, and of course Howard Landry, that trade request. That kind of covers most of the more important ones that kind of implicate the Giants to a degree, but there's going to be more, and there's going to be a lot to discuss as we get closer to the draft, as the combine rolls up. And I know a lot of people wanted us to do our full-scale remodel of the Giants, Anthony, so I think we will do that. Probably right before free agency, we'll do a full step-by-step, here's what we would do with cap implications, with cap figures.
I've got something planned for that.
Support a rebuild, and people want to see they don't want the same thing from us. So we'll do 2 different plans, step by step, on how we would address the needs of this team, to try to be competitive this year, but also set us up for long-term success. So we'll have differing opinions, of course, like we always do.
Yes.
But we'll put it into practice. We'll put it into we're going to be the GMs. If we were the GMs, this is what we would do. And see how close it is to the real thing.
I have a great idea and vision for that, and I'm going to get to work on that very soon here because I think that's going to be a really fun episode. I want to drop it right before free agency begins. So over the next week, Alex, you and I are going to be sitting down. We're going to be ironing this thing out and grinding away and giving everybody our step-by-step plans personally for what we would do if we were the GM of the Giants. It's going to be a lot of fun. So stay tuned for that. And, again, all these other rumor updates and news and speculation, everything right here on Fireside Giants. Make sure you leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you listen to Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. And make sure you go check out BetUS, the sportsbook with the fastest payouts in the industry. Use code YouTube150 for 150% deposit match up to $2,000. Without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.